In this video, we're going to outline the differences between solutions and projects and try to come to a better understanding of what they are, how they work, and hopefully shed some light on what is happening behind the scenes with solutions and projects. First of all, solutions and projects are managed from one window within the Visual Studio.NET IDE, and that is a Solution Explorer. This is where you'll do a lot of your work as you select files to work on within the main area. But the Solution Explorer also provides a little hierarchy to and a little structure as you go about developing your applications. First of all, there are projects, and projects are made of all the files that belong to a given project that you're working on, whether it be a web project or a Windows application or whatever the case might be. You can have multiple projects rolled into a solution because it might be convenient for you to, say, be debugging a application that calls another application, and for you to just do the debugging in one Visual Studio.NET IDE instance. And also you can have, as we have right here, not only a web service project within the My First Web Service solution, but we also have a web application that consumes that web service. So here's another web application. I also have here a setup project. So this will create an MSI file that you can take to another machine and install it, and it'll put all the settings and all the web pages and all the database connections in the right spots. So it creates an install program basically for this application. And then finally, in this particular example, I have a pubs database project, which allows me to create scripts and queries that can then be run as I move this from development into a staging environment and into a production environment if I'm working within an enterprise. But at any rate, understand that a project is a way of collecting files that are related to one another for one unit of work, a project, and you can have multiple projects rolled up into a solution. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, I don't need a solution because after all, most of the projects I create are single projects without any relationships to other projects. And while that might be true, it's actually impossible to create just a project within Visual Studio. Basically, whenever you create a project, it's going to create a solution for you as well. So it kind of forces this hierarchy or this way of containing projects and files. The next thing we want to take a look at is solutions and projects at their very essence, which are simply files that contain information about the solution and the project. A solution file is going to contain pointers to the underlying projects that compose the solution. And in a like manner, project files are going to point to all the files in addition to all the other resources, like any references that may need to be made to the .NET framework or any COM components that might be referred to. And so they're kind of these containers that describe the entire project. It might be where to save the file, any compilation settings that we may have set in the properties for that given project. So at this point, let's take a look at a Windows Explorer and look in our hard drive for the solution file and for the project file, and let's just briefly take a look at what they do behind the scenes. So what we're looking at is the Windows Explorer in Windows XP Professional, and we're going to expand the local disk, which is the C drive. And there's a very specific place that Visual Studio likes to store all the information regarding solutions. You go to Documents and Settings. You go to the user of the machine that is creating a given solution. So you may have multiple users on a machine, and if so, the user where this file was created or this solution was created is where you'll find the solution file. In this case, I know that it is my typical login, so I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to look at My Documents, Let me scroll down a little bit here. And you'll see Visual Studio Projects. And here we'll see all of the Visual Studio projects, aka solutions actually, that I've created under this account. And the one I'm looking for is my first web service. And when I do that, you can see that a couple of the actual projects are stored underneath this folder. For example, the database project that I created and the setup project are actually stored here, but the rest of the projects, the two web projects that I've created, are stored elsewhere. But here we find the solution file. It's designated with the SLN extension on the end, and what we can do is open this up by right-clicking the file, selecting Open with Notepad, and here we can see what's inside this SLN file. First of all, there's a lot of stuff in here, and it scrolls way off to the side, but there's a couple things that we can realize just up front. It has a listing for every project that is associated with this solution. And as you recall, there were 4 projects, and they're referred to in the order that they were added. So the first project is My First Web Service, and it can be found at http://localhost myfirstwebservice.csproj, which is a C# project file, and a GUID that represents it as well. Then the next project that we have is the web service consumer, and we have similar information for that, as well as the setup program that we created and the database project that we created. Now, in addition to this, there are other pieces of information like release versions, debug versions, and just a bunch of information that is used internally by VisualStudio.net to make several decisions as we compile and debug the solution. And we can talk about these more at a future point in time. But at its very essence, a solution is basically a simple file that points to and contains information about projects. Now let's take a look at a project file to better understand what it has inside of it. Okay, what I've done is just return the Windows Explorer to its ready state, and I'm going to navigate to C, inetpub, www.root, and here I'll find all of the project files that were web projects that I've created. And I'll scroll down and look for My First Web Service. And here I see a number of different files within this project, but there is, as was pointed out by the solution file, only one file that describes the project itself, and it's the myfirstwebservice.csproj. And so this is the file that I'm looking for. And so I'm going to select it, right-click it, open with Notepad. And now I can take a look at all of the settings for this given project. It is an XML file, first of all. That is something that's very interesting about this and can be parsed, and we can do a number of different things if we were so inclined to create a tool that wanted to understand how something about a project. So this is a very extensible architecture for project files, first of all. Gives some information about the type of project that it is, the version, and so forth. Any settings, configuration settings, so forth. References to different .NET framework assemblies, like the system.drawing, system.data, and so forth. And then the files that compose this project, the assemblyinfo.cs, the global.asax. And notice that there are properties with these files as well, subtype, build action. Now these can be set within VisualStudio.net when you select each of these files within the Solution Explorer and you look in the Properties window, they all have these properties that you can modify there, or you can just go into the CS Proj if you're so inclined to change them there, but I don't recommend that. But continuing on, you can see that that's just about it. Now, what we've looked at here is a web service project. However, a web forms project, a console application, a Windows form, they're all going to have different types of settings within them, but it's going to be generally the same for each one of these. What we wanted to do is just show you that there's really nothing to be afraid of, that projects are not voodoo and they're not magic, that they're just collections of information that describe the project and contain the settings that can be applied to any given project. So we'll close that for now, and I think that this is an adequate overview of understanding solutions as containers for projects and projects as containers to related files that all make up a given application. And we will talk more in depth about these issues in regards to managing projects in the next lesson, which is 1009, adding projects to a solution, and 1010, which is using the Solution Explorer. And I would encourage you to watch these movies as well. And thank you very much for viewing this video.